If you give your mitochondria everything they need to function normally, and taurine is a boost, you're going to eat through those lipids and you're going to reduce your dyslipidemia significantly. Astaxanthin. And the number of human studies and the number of things that we have learned about it has just skyrocketed. And I used to think it was amazing, and now it's like uber amazing.
Dr. Sandra, welcome back to the show.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
We decided to talk about supplements this time, which is a very popular topic as well. And you've talked a lot about different supplements and with your own rating system for grading their effectiveness or potential for health. So maybe we can just start off giving an overview of what does that system look like and how does it work?
No, so absolutely. So it starts out with the idea, and I may sound repetitive here, but I will repeat myself. I believe in what I call the 7 tenets of aging. And this is how I sort of organize cellular dysfunction. And then the numerical rating system is based on how well supplements or adjuvants do within those categories. So sort of in a moderately small nutshell, Tenet 1 has to do with DNA alterations. So this is epigenetics, this is telomere shortening, and then recently I have added sort of a subtopic of heterochromatin distribution. Because as we age, our chromatin, the heterochromatin versus euchromatin populations sort of change, and the less heterochromatin you have, sort of the worse off you are. So that's sort of new and different as the years have progressed. Tenet 2 is mitochondrial failure. And I think your mitochondria age in about 7-ish different ways, depending on how you count them. And this is anything from failure of your mitochondrial transport chain, with all the different subunits sort of coming and going, with NAD deficiency, with mitochondrial permeability transition pore failure, SIRT2 deficiency, there's some issues with fission and fusion and mitochondrial biogenesis, sort of, et cetera. So that's 2. 3 is pathways. And here are the classic 7 sirtuin pathways, AMP kinase, and of course, mTOR. And what I've also added in this category of late is the idea that circadian rhythms should be in the pathway category. And this is because there are very distinct molecular mechanisms as to why you sleep and why you wake up. They fail as you get older. We can address them. So therefore, I sort of put that in this category. Tenet 4 remains quality control. That is DNA repair mechanisms, proteostasis, and of course, autophagy. 5 is your immune system that becomes your inflammatory system over time. 6 is individual cell needs, which has to do with keeping your stem cells nice and happy, eradicating your senescent cells, and the idea that a red cell is different than a brain cell, et cetera. And then the last category is waste management, which is mostly glycation issues, as well as lipofuscin accumulation. So again, in a medium-sized nutshell, that's how I consider aging. And the way the rating system works is that if an agent has evidence in these categories, it gets either a 0, 1, 2, or 3. If there's evidence that it does absolutely nothing, it gets a 0. If there's evidence in test tubes or cultures, it gets a 1. Evidence in non-human mammal models, which are usually rodents, it gets a 2. Solid evidence in humans, then it gets a 3. So all of my agents have a 3-digit rating number. It tells you exactly what they do and what we know.
So the best, most powerful magic pill would be that it has 3 on all 7 of the tenets.
That would be miraculous. And some of them actually, there are some things that get kind of close. Yeah, absolutely.
What are some examples of that?
Well, so for example, Metformin does a lot. I think that people have overdone it with dosage, and then you start seeing unfortunate side effects in terms of hippocampal turnover. But Metformin is extremely powerful. NAD precursors don't do something in every category, but they do a lot in several categories. They're very potent. And the other thing that we're realizing is that I can't give 3s to research that hasn't been done yet. So for agents that don't have a lot of financial backing, human studies are very expensive. So just because we don't know that it does something in humans, we can sort of extrapolate that it probably does. So for example, Fisetin gets 2s in almost every category, but it doesn't have any good 3s yet because we just haven't looked. But I think that ultimately a lot of these numbers will go up. And I guess my big example here is I started revisiting a lot of the agents that I hadn't looked at for years. The first one, since I started alphabetically, was astaxanthin. And the number of human studies and the number of things that we have learned about it has just skyrocketed. And
Mm.
I used to think it was amazing. Now it's like uber amazing.
Yeah, I've seen also like, the last year or the year before was like the life extension study. They found an extended lifespan. And yeah, there's also these clinical trials with inflammation and skin health and yeah, other like benefits as well.
Oh yeah, stuff's amazing. Like what I did not realize, and probably because we didn't know it, that
Mm.
when you eat astaxanthin, it goes into your system, but it travels around your body in LDLs and HDLs, right? And it prevents the oxidation of those vesicles, essentially. And turns out that like a standard LDO, it's not great for you, but it's not really going to kill you. But once it's oxidized, that's when a macrophage comes along, sort of takes it in, becomes a foam cell, which then becomes the beginning of vascular sclerosis and plaque. So
Mm.
if you can avoid the oxidation of those molecules, you can theoretically reduce all relative risk of vascular sclerosis. And that was not known when I became obsessed with astaxanthin. So
Mm.
now I think everyone should just be on this for avoidance of, cardiovascular disease.
Mm. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of astaxanthin as well. Um, Including the other carotenoids actually. I've learned a lot more about recently about like lutein, zeaxanthin, and lycopene, and those things. They also have quite a lot of like for eye health mostly that help with eye health, maybe some inflammation as well, but predominantly like eye health.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it just has to do with the fact that they all have this very long polar chain. Well, I take it back. Um, Astaxanthin specifically has a long chain of carbons, which is polar, and then the ends are sort of nonpolar, right? Polar, nonpolar, polar. Yeah. Uh, both all areas, all two pieces or three pieces, depending on how you look at it, suck up free radicals and electrons. But what's cool about their mechanism is that they sit in membranes, right? So all the xanthins do it, including the ones that you referred to. And that's why it's so potent, because they go to the membranes in the retina and they suck up these free radicals and they improve vision, or at least they decrease the damage to vision. So it's
Mm.
super cool.
Right. What about like some other very like I guess powerful molecules that have a lot of threes?
Oh gosh. That is a really hard question to answer. Um,
Creatine, I don't know if if you've
no,
covered that.
actually, I've not rated creatine. It's great for your muscle, but it has not been rated yet. It is on the list of things to be rated.
Hmm.
Um, threes. You asked that in a very strange. The answer is I can't tell you right offhand.
Yeah,
Just,
from the website, there's like nicotinamide, curcumin.
oh, actually, this is perfect. You tell me the agent, and I can tell you what they
Yeah.
do. That's a much better method. So NAD, of course, is utterly amazing, and that's been all over the news lately. And the question is, what type of precursor should we be using?
Mm.
I read when I did the original rating system, it was pretty much only NR. And the irony is that we're sort of getting back to that. Um, but it did incredibly well with threes because, yes, there was money in it, so we could do human studies. And what NAD precursors do, obviously, is they become NAD. And this is responsible for all three aspects of energy production, in that it sits in your electron transport chain, it sits in the matrix of your mitochondria for the Krebs cycle, and it also is involved in glycolysis, so going from glucose to usable pieces and parts that go then feed into the mitochondria to make energy.
Mm.
But the other thing that NAD is needed for is 500 reactions, whereby we actually take the molecule apart and use it as a cofactor. The two important ones are the sirtuins. So every sirtuin, you need NAD as a cofactor, and then all of the PARPs. PARP1 especially, which is DNA repair. So without NAD, you don't have a whole lot of DNA repair, meaning you're more likely to get cancer or cell death, apoptosis. Alternatively, if you don't have NAD for sirtuins, you're going to lose cellular homeostasis. So there's an absolute, a lot of money got dumped into NAD research, which is why it's threes. And we know that it is absolutely critical. Once upon a time, there was only nicotinamide riboside. Now there's nicotinamide mononucleotide, although that's getting pulled from the market because they're turning it into a drug, which I think is absurd, but it is what it is. You can also inject straight up NAD, which is quite nice.
Mm.
It all has to do, the reason all of this sort of goes on is that there's no actual NAD receptor, with the exception of on neurons. So if you inject NAD into the system, it has to be converted into something else to get into cells, with the exception of neurons, which is why IV NAD, the only thing that I think is really good for is actually neurological issues. Everything else should be a precursor, because too much delivered in an IV system could actually be sort of toxic. But NAD, anyone over the age of 40, and you're not even there yet, should be on some sort of NAD supplementation.
Right. So yeah, like either NR, NMN, or even like nicotinamide would work.
Yeah, and any of the B3 vitamins can theoretically do it. A lot of them just have side effects that are sort of miserable, but yes, absolutely.
I want to take a quick break to let you know about my favorite wellness devices, which are the bond charge red light therapy devices. You've probably seen many of your favorite longevity influencers using these red light therapy devices, but do they actually work? Yes, they do. Red light therapy has been shown to have many benefits on skin anti-aging, hormone optimization, pain management, and even exercise performance. I use my device every day for 15 minutes, especially during the winter months when there's not much sunlight. It increases my energy in the morning and makes my skin glow. Just check out the testimonials on the bond charge website for the before and after pictures of other people. Most red light therapy devices don't have the right wavelengths of light, which might mean you're not getting the claimed benefits. Bond charge uses the exact wavelengths of light used in research, and they also have near infrared light that's beneficial to the joints. Head over to bondcharge.com and use the code SIIM, SIIM, for a 15% discount.
Next one of my favorite supplements is a glycine, which I like a lot. What do you think about glycine?
Well, that's very curious. So it's just a methyl donor. So what do you like so much about glycine?
Well, first of all, it's like for collagen turnover required and supports collagen synthesis. Then you have glutathione and creatine synthesis, helps with sleep, helps with blood sugar, regulates autophagy, might help with like methionine restriction based on animal studies. And there are like 2 years ago, I think something like that was some human trials with glycine and NAC, so GlyNAC, that showed quite interesting effects on like gait speed, grip strength, some biomarkers as well, and mitochondrial function and inflammation and those kind of things. So yeah, if I were to use the same kind of system, then it's going to have a few threes, a lot of twos.
Well, what I think is interesting is sort of about it's an amino acid, and it's a very basic amino acid. So it's a building block for a lot of these things. And then the question is and I ask this myself all the time, like if you were glycine deficient and you put it back, of course it's going to help. Does extra do more? And the answer is in some categories it does, and in some categories it does not. But you're right. I do like glycine. It has not been rated. It's another one of these. I promise there's hundreds of these things on my list to do. Yes, I usually recommend it as a methylating agent, but it does all of those wonderful things in addition.
Speaking of the methyl donors, like with these NAD boosters like NR, it's often said that you need to take like a methyl donor alongside to prevent depleting the methyl donors. Do you think that's actually warranted or not?
So it depends on how much of a precursor you take. So what's really interesting. So if you take some sort of precursor and you get a high level of NAD, and that gets metabolized and you end up with NAM, which is just the straight up nicotinamide, that molecule loves to be methylated. So if you have a large quantity of that in any one given cell, it's going to suck up all of your methyl donors. Thus, you're going to negatively affect all the epigenetics and other places that you need your methyl donors. Therefore, people that are on a lot of NAD most definitively need some sort of methylation support. On the other hand, if you just use a little bit or you are younger, you don't need it.
Right. Gotcha. It's because you have like more, I guess, NAD baseline.
Yeah. You don't start becoming I mean, statistically speaking, and granted, it's hard to measure your levels, and people are starting to do so, but it's pretty hard. But statistically speaking, you're going to start really needing it by the time you are 40, or if you also have a lot of systemic pathology, because inflammatory processes require a lot of energy for repair and that sort of thing. But for most normal people under the age of 40, you're not very NAD deficient, therefore adding too much will make you toxic because NAM is toxic with feedback loops and sex up the methyl groups.
Gotcha. Too much of anything, yeah, it can be harmful.
Yeah.
Curcumin was another one on your list.
Oh, I love curcumin. So here's my 30-second speech, because everyone always says, I eat turmeric. And I always say, that's nice. It tastes good, right? But like 1 to 5% of turmeric is actually curcumin. Curcumin by itself has terrible bioavailability, absolutely terrible. So for the last 15 years, there's been the ever escalating war of who can make it more bioavailable. And the first stage is they added pepper. Pepper decreases the liver's ability to digest it, so it lasts a little bit longer. They've tried putting it with various things. My favorite is a company called Rev Genetics, whereby it's in a nanomycel. And when you take the capsule or you look at the capsule, it looks like encapsulated goo. And in fact, you can open it and play with it. It's pretty runny and gross and squishy, but it's incredibly effective. And they know this. So they advertise on the bottle. It's called 277X. So it is 277 times as bioavailable as standard curcumin. And people just do incredibly well. It is a polyphenol, so it's an epigenetic modifier. It is an anti-inflammatory. It just has amazing qualities. It's one of the few things that reduces lipofuscin accumulation. I love it. I put everyone on curcumin.
Yeah. So it actually has some human trials as well. Inflammation is the biggest one I've seen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And granted, I have not looked at that now in several years, so it's going to get revamped. I'm rewriting a lot of my previous books, only because there's so much more research. So it will get relooked at, but I can guarantee you there's got to be a lot of human evidence, because we use it in cancer research. We use it for anyone that has any sort of arthritis, rheumatoid, osteoarthritis. It is just a tremendous chemical. So right. So anything that activates NRF2, and a lot of the polyphenols do that. It's amazing, right? Because that then increases glutathione, catalase, and all the superoxide dismutases, which is actually sort of interesting. So many people are on straight up glutathione, and I'm concerned that it's a negative feedback loop to the NRF2. So you're not going to then be making catalase and your SODs.
So no, not good to take straight up glutathione.
So the answer is, in my opinion, you either take the precursor, which is NAC, or you don't take glutathione every day. You just take it as a big bolus once a month or once a week, depending on who you are and what your liver is doing. But the inflammatory pathways, which are different, it's mostly the NK alpha system. Is that right? Sorry, my brain scrambled today. Anyway, but by turning off the
Nuclear factor, kappa B or something.
Yes, thank you. My brain is off today. But by turning that off, you're turning off the cytokinins that cause most of the inflammation. So it's 1A, 6, and a variety of other ones. While the opposite, of course, is 10 and 17. We want those.
Okay. What about like ginger as well? It's kind of similar to curcumin in a lot of ways.
It is. It's similar, and it's the same sort of thing. Ginger straight up. The molecules are just not that prevalent, so you need to take actually the isolated molecules in bulk or with higher bioavailability. No, ginger's great. It does a few other things as well. It's molecularly related, not identical, not as good.
Gotcha. I've seen a few clinical trials with that. Weight loss, surprisingly, helps with weight loss and waist circumference.
Well, that's because it's also a GLP agonist.
Right.
Ginger.
Yeah.
The ginger aside A and B, I think, are the molecules that do it. It's not potent, but it does work.
Yeah. It's maybe very small amount compared to GLP-1 agonists.
Yeah, but that may be something that people, when they come off of their injections, they may want to continue on a less intensive oral therapy where you just sort of get reminded not to eat as much, and you still maybe get some of the benefits without all of the downsides.
Yeah, and I guess, if you're just, not clinically obese or you're seriously overweight, then you might use it to lose a few extra kilograms or something.
Yeah. And I will tell you, a lot of people do that. But not just ginger. There are a few things that do. Like, anyway, I'm creating a supplement product with some folks with all of the natural GLPs. So I'm sort of not at liberty to discuss exactly what they are. But there are some really good ones out there, and I think that's going to be a viable alternative to the injection system.
Yeah. If you were to try to grade Ozempic and GLP-1 themselves, because obviously they work partly through calorie restriction, but there's also some other effects on the GLP-1 itself that helps with blood sugar and the other benefits. So I guess if you were to try to put any number on those things, what would it be?
The answer is I don't know. I'd have to sit there and read clinical studies. For example, what would it do to your telomeres? Probably nothing. What would it do to your epigenetics? It might have some effect. It's not going to change your heterochromatin distribution. Mitochondria, hard to say. Pathways, it would probably activate your AMP kinase pathway, right? Because it's reducing your caloric load. Anything that's a partial AMP kinase activator is also a partial mTOR activator, so that might have some degree of activity. It would probably act a bit as an anti-inflammatory because you're lowering some of the cytokinins that's coming from the adipose tissue. So over the course of time, that would be something. Individual cells is not going to do a whole lot. Waste management would actually be, if it can lower glucose levels, that would be useful. So it would have a mixed score.
Yeah. I guess,
most people are talking about systems right now and not cell-based. So it's going to be hard to say. The other thing that's happening is we keep going through different generations of these things, and they all seem to have slightly different profiles. So when you just sort of say, okay, well, what is a GLP going to do? It's going to depend on which one it is or what combination we have.
One really, I guess, interesting molecule as well is melatonin, which does have quite powerful anti-inflammatory effects, antioxidant effects. How would you rate melatonin?
Oh gosh, I have rated it. I don't remember what the exact number is, but you are spot on. It is amazing for your mitochondria. Amazing for your mitochondria. In fact, I went to a conference once and a gentleman was recommending 200 milligrams a night. And I'm like, that's kind of silly. So I made it up to I made it up to 20. I think I pushed beyond 20 once and then I was an absolute zombie. But no, melatonin is absolutely fantastic. Again, nothing for your DNA. To recall this, mitochondria, obviously it's scored a 3. Pathways, probably not. Inflammation, probably it's scored because it does have some anti-inflammatory properties. Probably nothing for repair. Cells, I think that there's some evidence that helps your bone cells. And then waste management, I don't recall. Maybe some slight glucose lowering, but probably not a lot. But it definitely had some 3s because we have a lot of human studies with melatonin.
Yeah. Actually interesting to see. As in 10 milligrams helps with lipids and inflammation. But like you said, if I personally, if I've taken 10 milligrams, I was also waking up quite groggy and like a zombie a little bit for a few hours. And I've seen actually on Amazon, on the US Amazon only, I've seen 100 milligram doses, which sound quite a lot.
And I don't really quite understand. So in the UK, you can't even get melatonin. That is baffling to me. Absolutely. I don't understand why they do that. But
yeah, that's kind of interesting.
I have a lot of UK clients and I recommend it. And they're like, yeah, we can't get it. It's like saying we can't get a prenatal vitamin. It just seems absurd. But anyway.
Right. Moving on maybe with Carnosine. I remember that was one of your favorites.
I love Carnosine. I can't wait to go back and sort of revisit it. But so Carnosine, I chose to put in the panacea because it's a simple, safe transglycosylating agent. And what does that mean? So when sugars, and you obviously know all this, I'll just sort of repeat it for your listeners. So when reducing sugars, which are mostly glucose and fructose, combine in an oxidative environment, they break up into pieces and they create something called AGEs, which are advanced glycation end products. AGEs are incredibly inflammatory, which is bad. They land on tissues and they cause tissue destruction. Just absolutely horrible things. But becoming a glucose molecule, breaking down and becoming an AGE is actually a 6 non-enzymatic step process. And the first steps are reversible, and the second half of the steps are not reversible. So what I always like to say is in the first half of their relationship, this glucose and this protein, they're not committed to each other. It's slightly romantic, but they're not committed. And if you take a more attractive molecule and you introduce it into the system, you can take the glucose away, right? Once they're married and they're stuck together, you're sort of hosed. Nothing's going to happen. You're stuck with an AGE. But anyway, so the first half of this process, if you introduce a more, a better molecule, the glucose will jump ship onto that molecule and then you excrete it. And that's what transglycosylating agents are. And there's several. Carnosine is the most benign, safe, easy to get, easy to produce molecule, which is why I chose to put that in the panacea. Other things include like hydralazine. It's one of my favorite drugs. Hydralazine is used, it's a drug to use for emergency high blood pressure. So if you showed up at the emergency room and your pressure was like, 200 over 100, they'd be like, oh my God, hydralazine. So I can't really tell people to take hydralazine because it will crump out your blood pressure. On the other hand, the hydrazine molecule is an amazing transglycosylating agent. That's my best example. And there's several of them that fall into that category. But the easiest is carnosine.
Gotcha.
Other really nice thing about carnosine is it is a muscle buffer. So when you consume it, it goes into your muscles, which is if you eat chicken and turkey, there tends to be a lot of carnosine in it as well because it lives in their muscle. And it buffers the acid. So if you're a big exerciser or you're getting back into exercising and you get that burn when you exercise and you like ache the next day, this essentially gets rid of that. So people love this.
Okay.
So this is why carnosine is so amazing. The two other interesting factoids is that so you can take it as a pill, so it gets all over your body and it helps to do all of these things I've mentioned. But you can also use it as eye drops, and they're just NAC eye drops. They're over the counter, and it actually can lift some of the glucose off of your lens and actually start to decrease cataracts and presbyopia. So I am obsessed with these eye drops. This whole eye drop thing now, which is kind of fun. We could talk about that in a minute if you want. The other kind of thing that you need to know about carnosine is because it is everyone has it in their regular bodies, right? It is an endogenous dipeptide. Men have more than women. Young people have more than old people. So as you are a woman and you are aging, like you're in the worst category possible. But because it is a naturally occurring agent, we have enzymes to get rid of it. So there's an enzyme called carnosine ACE, and it eats up carnosine. So the more carnosine you take as a supplement, the more you rev up the enzyme to get rid of it. And then you've got this escalating game of eat it, break it down, eat it, break it down. So for supplements that are actual supplements, meaning like you have it in your body, I recommend cycling those to allow your regular enzymes to sort of go back to normal. And then you can scratch again. Because otherwise, at some point, you're taking a standard dose and it's not going to do squat for you because you just get rid of it instantaneously.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. How, like, I've heard that it's not like very bioavailable in of itself.
So the interesting thing about bioavailability is it sort of depends on, you can always increase the dose, number one, right? Or you can microencapsulate it. You can do this, you can do that. I will tell you that regular carnosine, the numbers probably don't tell the whole story, because I can tell you that when I personally take one capsule, which is, depending on the brand, is either 400 to 500 milligrams, I don't feel anything. It's great. If I screw up, and I have done this, and I take 2, your body is just on pins and needles, that burning weird carnosine flash for like 5-10 minutes. And you go, ooh, that's bioavailable. I feel that.
Gotcha.
So I guarantee you that it's getting into your body.
Yeah, because like if you take beta alanine, right, then your body makes carnosine.
Yep.
If you're not mistaken. So that's one other like alternative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can
And
do
it also
that.
gives it a tingle.
Yep. So depending on, so young people do better with the individual agent. So 20s and 30s, absolutely take the components. If you are old, you don't do that as well. So take the carnosine.
AKG, so alpha-ketoglutarate. That's talked a lot about as well, and it's has some interesting animal research about lifespan. What do you think about AKG?
I love it. I love it. It supports your brain. It supports every cell that uses glutamate, which is in your mitochondria. Very, very, very useful. I have found that the best use for it is actually with people that have GI dysfunction.
Mm.
I have found that people with leaky gut or some sort of possible leaky gut, it just really, really, really helps them. The question is always, however, so if there's alpha-ketoglutarate, it's one of those things that has to be complex to something. So there's calcium, alpha-glutarate, and then there's also arginine ketoglutarate. And for older people, I always tell them to take the arginine because then that's helpful as well. It sort of serves as a low-key vasodilator.
Gotcha.
But I'm a big fan of ketoglutarate.
Mm. Which like type? So like there's different. You can attach it to different things like calcium, arginine. Do you think any one of those is better or not?
So it depends on who you are, right? So if you are old and you have a high calcium score, don't take extra calcium. So you don't want it, right? On the other hand, if you have a calcium deficiency, which a lot of women do, then that's important.
Mm.
I mostly deal with older people and we worry about like vasoreactivity and et cetera. And it's arginine is very useful as a low-grade vasodilator.
Mm.
So I tell most of my clients to go with the arginine.
Gotcha. Yeah, I also tend to be more careful with calcium because there's like the studies like large doses of calcium can be problematic for heart disease risk.
No, it absolutely is, and I think that it's really interesting. I've lately become sort of obsessed with low-grade metal toxicities, iron, calcium, copper, because especially iron. What happens, and it's really interesting, is your body absorbs it into your intestinal cells, your enterocytes, and those cells decide if I have enough, I'm just going to like get rid of that cell, and if they don't, they absorb it. Right? But once iron is in your body, other than hemorrhage, there's no way to get rid of it. Right? So young women that are menstruating sort of lose blood, so you're losing iron. Men obviously don't do this, and older women don't do it. So all the iron that you're bringing in is stuck there. Right? And so what does it do? Like you need some, right? You need some to make red cells and to sort of run, various reactions around your body. But unfortunately, iron takes part in the Fenton reaction in terms of oxidative stress. So the more iron you have, the worse oxidative stress you have, the more free radicals, et cetera, the worse off you are. So there's no way to sort of clear this stuff out other than natural chelators. I mean, there's some like big ass chelators that you can use for drugs, but they're not going to give it to you, and it's ridiculously expensive unless you're dying of something. So I've been trying to focus on chelating or trying to chelate or reduce the intake of these agents as much as possible. And it turns out, back to our friend astaxanthin, it turns out that every molecule of astaxanthin can theoretically clamp onto two molecules based on the two rings of a +2 metal. So I have a client that has some high mercury levels, and we're going to try to reduce it with astaxanthin, see if that works.
Interesting. Yeah. And the excess iron also like drives this lipofuscin that you mentioned earlier, one of the like things that accumulates.
Yeah, it does, because it's absolutely. So because the body can't get rid of it, it stashes it in the back of the cell. It causes things to sort of become globs that are non-digestible. So it just sits in the back of cells, and you get lipofuscin accumulation, and especially in nerve cells and brain cells as you get older, that is a huge problem in terms of taking up space and not being able to have cognitive ability. So all of these people that take extra iron, I think, oh my God, I don't think that's a unless you're truly deficient, I just don't think that's a great idea. I'm
Yeah.
also weary of now everyone's taking copper tripeptides. I'm actually really concerned with all the extra copper going into people because it is, well, it's a +2 charge. It can theoretically cause issues.
Like topical as well, or just oral?
Well, anything that you put on your body is going to go into your body theoretically, right? Like if you think that some sort of topical copper is going to affect your body in a positive way, it has to get into your body.
What about like another popular one is taurine? Like it's
Oh,
become
I love
popular.
taurine. So taurine is fantastic. Taurine is amazing for your mitochondria. Truly, truly, truly amazing. I can't say it. I don't remember the numbering system, but I became infatuated with taurine a couple years ago. It's absolutely on anyone that needs a mitochondrial program, needs a boost. Taurine is it. Absolutely. I wish I had more details like just in the top of my tongue, but I don't. But I'm absolutely pro taurine if there was a voting system.
Yeah, there are like exercise performance benefits slightly, and with human clinical trials, you have like metabolic syndrome, like cholesterol, blood pressure, inflammation, and those kind of things. So yeah, it has like a pretty good. There's a round of effects in both the animal studies plus human studies.
I think most of it just relates to upregulation of mitochondrial function, if my memory serves me correctly. So what's interesting about mitochondria is mitochondria decide, am I going to use glucose or am I going to use lipids as an energy source? Depending on the sirtuin input, depending on sort of what your metabolism is, like it changes over time, right? Which is one of the reasons that older people have cholesterol issues or lipid issues, lipid dyscrasias, because they're not utilizing it the way they used to because their mitochondria can't. So if you upregulate your sirtuins, you upregulate your PCG1 alpha, if you give your mitochondria everything they need to function normally, and taurine is a boost, you're going to eat through those lipids and you're going to reduce your dyslipidemia significantly.
Yeah. What do you think about like some of these supplements that I guess like targeting multiple hallmarks of aging as like the selling point? So like, do you think that's a smart idea, or are there some limitations with that?
So that's two questions, actually. So the hallmarks of aging is this giant laundry list of non-organized thoughts. And it's a great list, but it keeps growing and it's not parallel. Like it'll have like your microbiome in one corner, collagen production over here, telomeres over here. Like it's not organized. So it's like a bingo card as far as I'm concerned, right? That's why I like my system, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with subcategories. So I can say, aha. And they're all sort of interrelated, right? We know that oxidative stress drives inflammation, that drives this, that drives that. So if you look at a true sort of Venn diagram of all of these things, they're going to be like monstrously overlapping. But we try to separate them just for the conversation, right? So it would not be unusual for one agent to do many things in many categories because they are all interrelated, right? And you never would take one thing to do one thing. Well, that's not true. Sometimes you would take one thing to do one thing, but in general, your body doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. So many things will do things in many categories, just maybe not as well. And then there's a few specializers, right? Like TA65, it pretty much only takes care of your telomeres. Doesn't do a whole lot of anything else. But then other things have like, cross the boards. They're just horribly beneficial. So I don't think the system, it doesn't work one-to-one, but it certainly doesn't always work one-to-many. It's a mixture.
Maybe we can take a turn to like the disappointment supplements. Like what are like some zeros that have mostly zeros?
Oh God, there's so many. It's funny. I read them and I'm so utterly disappointed. Like the one people used to take to build up their is it chondroitin sulfate to build up the cartilage in their knees. That is the most worthless thing I have ever seen in my life. Like pointless, absolutely flippin' pointless. So I take people off of that. trying to think what, I mean, there's a ton of them. I get people's lists all the time, and you just go, no, not so good.
What about resveratrol?
I love resveratrol. So just because Sinclair's a little nutty. So resveratrol is a very potent polyphenol. It really does activate sirtuins. And the way you have to look at this is you can't just look at one person's study, right? If one study says it, you go, that's interesting. If 7 studies go, you go, well, that's pretty decent. If like 100 studies demonstrates that an agent does X, it probably does it, right? So there's absolute evidence that resveratrol upregulates sirtuin 1, and by default probably upregulates some of the other sirtuins as well. The key here is that you need NAD as a cofactor. So sometimes when you don't have enough NAD, resveratrol is not going to do anything. Right? So you have to sort of look at the conditions in each study. What are they looking for? What exactly are they measuring? But
Right.
I'm a believer in resveratrol. It also has to be bioavailable. A lot of it's not.
I guess, yeah, like the problem with the resveratrol is the human studies have been kind of disappointing in that sense.
Well, the other thing is that people take one agent and they throw it against a wall of like incredibly horrible people, type 4 diabetics. I'm making that up, horrible diabetics, massive, obesity, cholesterol out the wazoo. These people are close to death, and they send them like one agent with a conservative dose. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing, because that's common sense. There is no magical cure. Things take combinations. So for that person, you need to, fix their lipids, fix their oxidative stress levels, activate their sirtuins. I mean, there's so many things. And if you put a combination of things together, you will absolutely see results. One thing is never going to fix all of those things.
Right. Yeah, I think with the resveratrol, you had like one mouse study where it like extended the lifespan in these super obese mice who were fed like 60% coconut oil diet. And in humans, you have like some clinical trials that in obese patients it does like help with some lipids and I guess and like blood sugar as well. So it's like, these people aren't like eating a 60% coconut oil diet, but it's kind of similar that the standard American diet is similar to this very high fattening diet, and they're overweight and obese. So I guess at least my interpretation of the literature is that resveratrol would actually work only in people who have this obesogenic diet and dyslipidemia.
So I would back up and say you have to redefine your endpoint, right? When you say work, what exactly do you mean by work, right? If you're looking for weight loss, that's one thing. If you're looking for a change in their lipids, that's another thing. What you really want to be looking at is their sirtuin levels, right? That's what you want to be looking at, because resveratrol is a sirtuin activator, right? No one does, but very few people do this. But this is what you have to do, right? You need to measure 1, 3, and 6 and see actually what it does. Because then by default, what do sirtuins do? Well, they help you sleep better. They don't measure that. No one counts that. It decreases cancer risk, but that's not what they're measuring, right? You have to know what your outcome is. You have to define the goals of your study, I think, more appropriate to the agent and not just something that's readily measurable. What is overrated? That's a good question. Problem is I never keep track of the ones that are overrated because I sort of toss them.
I don't know, multivitamin or something.
Oh, I love multivitamins. And I actually tell people that they should be on prenatal vitamins because you are making new cells every day. And by the time you're in your 50s and 60s, and again, like you're such a kid, but by the time you're in your 50s and your 60s, your diet has become very specific, right? So you are by default micronutrient deficient in something, right? A Japanese person at the age of 50 is going to be different than someone from Argentina versus this versus that, just based on their food sources, what's in the ground, even if they're eating all natural. You're going to be deficient in something, right? So what you want to do is you want to replete it with things as if you were growing a brand new baby. You don't need as much, right? Because you're not actually growing a baby, but you do need to replete all the micronutrients. So at your age, you probably don't need it. Once you hit 50, 60, 70, absolutely. And I think that like the whole Centrum Silver thing is ridiculous. because it doesn't actually give you what you need.
Yeah. With multivitamins, there's like these clinical trials with cognitive function and memory that I've seen that in older people it helps with memory, I recall, and this episodic memory.
Because they're deficient. So, but that's just general health. I don't consider that longevity per se. Like general health is you're deficient in something, fix it, and then you're done. Right?
Yeah. I guess the challenge is that, you know, these multivitamins have all different formulas and different amounts of things. So you don't know what amount is actually needed for each nutrient. And, you know, different things are in the multivitamin. There's no like criteria what's constitutes a multivitamin.
No, you're absolutely right. Which is why I tell people go with prenatals. Very smart people have figured out exactly what baby cells need. I will tell you that any pregnant woman that took prenatals, their hair grows better, their vision was better, their nails are harder, everything is better. Why? Because they're not nutrient deficient anymore. As soon as they give birth, they don't take it anymore and everything goes back to where they were before. And then they get kind of annoyed. Like, well, you could take them anytime you want. You know, they're gummies from Amazon. I mean, they're cheap, they taste good, and they're very useful. Granted, you don't need a full dose, as I said, but they're very helpful. So I was actually looking through my list of other interesting things to sort of bring up. And one of my other kicks this year was to work on the different sirtuins. Because, you know, we've been working on sirtuin 1 forever, right? So resveratrol, pterostilbene, and parviflora. But I thought, oh my God, we need to fix 3, right? 3, 4, and 5 run your mitochondria. 3 becomes deficient actually before any of the other ones. So I've become a huge believer in dihydromyricetin or hinokiol, but dihydromyricetin is probably my favorite only because it's more available. It's fantastic because it's sold online as a hangover cure.
Yeah, I remember that. I saw the names.
It's fantastic, right? And so when you start buying it, you start getting like pamphlets from, Alcoholics Anonymous. But the stuff's amazing, and your energy levels just really increase. It's tremendous.
So it's like an anti-aging compound then.
Well, it's activating sirtuin 3, which is going to upregulate. It's the master switch of your mitochondria. So it's going to increase mitochondrial biogenesis. It increases PCG1 alpha. Everything gets upregulated in your mitochondria, so you just have more energy, right? So you're going to, everything that requires energy, which is everything, you're going to think better. You're going to like process toxins faster, for example, in your liver. You can grow muscle faster. You recover fast. Everything is just better. And you won't notice it when you're younger, but when you start having energy issues, it's a godsend.
Yeah, and you don't need to take it with a hangover. You don't need to get the hangover to take it.
No, but it's sort of humorous. So my 18-year-old daughter is in college, and she's been doing this stuff with me now for years. So she keeps a bottle of it like in her dorm. So when her friends have hangovers, she's like, "Oh, I can fix this." But she's also, it's funny, she's decided that she's going to be the world's youngest biohacker. So she now has, an Instagram, and she puts out posts, and she's working on a website, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But she's obviously trying to gear it toward like the 20 and under crowd, which is sort of funny. But I think there's a real appetite for this stuff out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you start young, then you'll get ahead of the curve. Another, like you brought up this kind of, it's a side effect from like a hangover supplement, but these antihistamines are also quite interesting that they have the senolytic effects. And the last one that I saw was this meclizine that extended lifespan in the same study that astaxanthin did so as well. So what do you think about the antihistamines?
So antihistamines, so histamines, just so I don't know if your listeners know this or not. So mast cells are part of your immune system, and when they get activated by allergens, they release histamine. Histamine is a massive inflammatory agent. So it's what causes, like if you bonk yourself or get bitten or something, it's what brings all the inflammatory processes in, right? So it causes the redness, it causes the swelling, it causes the itching, it causes all of that. So theoretically, if you got rid of that and you reduced the inflammatory process, yeah, of course you're going to do better.
Mm.
I also, I'm not a huge fan only because antihistamines and I just fall asleep immediately. So for me, that's not a great thing, but I love the idea of it.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not like myself taking them, but coincidental, like so like our dog gets like car sickness and he's drooling in the car, and like one of the nausea medications we gave him, like I read like the active ingredient is this meclizine that was
Yeah.
just found to extend lifespan. So we're like maybe extending our dog's lifespan with that whenever he's going for a ride. So
Yeah, in very small periods of time. That's funny. But if you want to go down the medication road, so I love, so I'm an anesthesiologist by training. So I love the idea of repurposing medications for longevity.
Mhm.
And there are just so many really cool, interesting medications out there.
Yeah.
My new favorite that freaks people out is obviously lithium. Um, it's sort of interesting. Number one, low dose lithium has been demonstrated to decrease all-cause morbidity and mortality, which is just really interesting. And then there's this interesting set of studies where people that were bipolar by default have shorter telomeres. It's probably oxidative stress related, but we don't really know. If these people that were bipolar have been on lithium for more than 2 years, then their telomeres are actually longer than regular people's, which is really interesting. Clearly, there are no studies of normal people on lithium because normal people don't usually take a whole lot of lithium. But based on that and a variety of other positive aspects of lithium, I decided to start taking 75 milligrams a day. And now I'm up to about a year and a half of doing it. So like 6 more months, I'll get my telomeres maybe
75
checked.
milligrams. That's quite a lot. It's usually 1 milligram.
Well, it is, but it's not. So from a physician point of view, if someone came to you as a person with a bipolar disease or depressed, et cetera, significant, and they put them on lithium, the starting dose is 300.
Mm.
And most people bump from 300 to 600 to 900. There's even people on 1,200 milligrams of lithium a day.
Wow.
So by taking a quarter of the smallest dose, in my world, that's actually quite conservative.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, that is
Right?
like,
I freak out other people,
mm.
but
Yeah, there's also the studies that lithium in the drinking water is associated with less suicide and less homicide and longevity overall.
hmm yeah. So the answer is I wouldn't recommend licking lithium batteries or anything, but pharmaceutical lithium is fantastic.
Mm.
But there's a lot of really, really cool drugs out there. So another one of my favorites is this thing called Cellbex. I think it's just fantastically esoteric. So Cellbex is a Japanese drug approved for gastritis, right? And what it actually does, it's a heat shock protein activator,
Mhm.
right? So if you take it, it activates pretty much everything that increases protein production or makes proteins not be misfolded, right? So in your gut lining, it protects the mucosa. And
Mm.
it turns out, obviously, it's a systemic drug, so it's going to go everywhere. It's going to reduce all relative risk of any disease that has to do with misfolding. And there's one preliminary study they did with mild Alzheimer's, and they showed a benefit.
Interesting.
So it's the equivalent of sitting in the sauna if you don't have time.
Mm. Yeah. Obviously, rapamycin is one of the like most notorious pharmaceutical for lifespan. Are you taking like rapamycin, or what do you think?
Nope. So rapamycin is it has good press. Whoever they hired as press agent, great job well done. So, but rapamycin is a monstrous immune suppressor, right? Which is sometimes good, but sometimes bad. We actually use it for cancer therapy. And you use it if someone has stents in their heart and you don't want regrowth of tissue, because it is a monster mTOR inhibitor, right? So for people that don't want to turn over tissue and want to preserve tissue, it's fantastic, right? The problem is that if you really read through the studies, there are tissues that need to turn over and then can't, such as hippocampus, right? So there is evidence that it can cause hippocampal shrinking and certain memory issues in rodents. And I've actually talked to some people that feel that they've had some memory issues from rapamycin for longevity. And it may make your skin look better. It may make, other things better, but if you can't remember it, it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
There's different subdivisions. I mean, there's mTOR1 and mTOR2. Rapamycin is like a hammer. I think when we come up with rapalogs that are more specific and we understand them better, then that will be a really good therapy. But at the moment, I don't think we're there. And I personally am not ready to do that.
Yeah, like the mTOR C1 is also needed for the growth of neurons. So if you suppress that, then yeah, some neurodegeneration risk can be coming. But I guess we again, like, periodically taking, maybe not all the time, occasionally.
Yeah, the problem is we just don't know, right? I mean, if we're going to live to like 100, 120 or more, right? What is the detrimental effect on your brain turnover if you start doing it too early? And no one knows.
Yeah.
So, who knows? Maybe someone's taking it and they're going to do incredibly well. It's the best thing since sliced bread. It's hard to say. But it's everything that we choose to do is a relative risk analysis. And I'm not personally ready to do that. Now, granted, I take a lot of crazy drugs, but that one I won't do. I mean, people laugh at me. I take allopurinol to lower my uric acid levels that aren't elevated in the first place because I think that, even a standard uric acid level is too high. So I get rid of that. I take aldose reductase inhibitors because, so glucose floating around in your body, goes into a cell, turns into sorbitol, and then turns into fructose. And fructose is 10 times, roughly 7 to 10 times more glycosylating than glucose, right? As well, sorbitol causes horrible osmotic issues, and this is why diabetics have nerve injuries. Glucose goes into the cell, gets turned into sorbitol, sucks in fluid, and it just destroys sort of the inner workings of the cell. So the enzyme that takes glucose to sorbitol is called aldose reductase. It's part of the pentyl pathway. And if you block that with aldose reductase inhibitors, theoretically you'll have more glucose, but you'll have less sorbitol and less fructose, which are significantly worse.
Gotcha.
Therefore, I take an aldose reductase inhibitor.
What would be like some, let's say, I guess like a mini snack for people who, don't want to start taking a bunch of supplements? What would be like some, I guess, essentials?
It depends on how old you are. So I usually recommend the Panacea to start. So anyone over 40 is going to be sirtuin deficient, NAD deficient, high inflammatory issues and oxidative stress, and some glucose, right? So those are the big issues. So the Panacea is pterostyl. Unless you have lipid issues, then you go with resveratrol. Astaxanthin, an NAD precursor, Carnosine, like we talked about, and Curcumin that we talked about. So that is the place for people to start if you are above 40.
Right. What about like young people who, are early in the game?
So people early in the game, you need to think about your lifestyle and your family history. So in terms of lifestyle, if you're out in the sun a lot, you need to deal with DNA preservation. So that's astaxanthin and perhaps some polypodium to increase your DNA repair rates, right? If you're drinking, then you need to upregulate your sirtuin 3, dihydromyricetin. If you are vaping, extreme oxidative stress, extreme. That's an astaxanthin / methylene blue delphinidin thing. If you are a terrible eater, perhaps you need to worry about your epigenetics game and you need some sulforaphane and some green tea, that sort of thing. So I think it's hard to be specific, but at the very least, anyone is going to benefit from astaxanthin, some methylene blue, some green tea, perhaps some chlorogenic acid, basics.
What about like omega-3 or magnesium or something like that?
Young people don't really need that yet. That's a middle-aged problem.
Right. The omega-3.
Yeah. People's metabolism is, I mean, unless you're 400 pounds and you're 12, I don't want to make fun of those people because they do exist. Generally speaking, your lipid composition, thus leading to the composition in your lipid bilayers, is not really all that screwed up until you get a little older.
Yeah. And yeah, heart disease, starts, or I mean, it starts pretty early, but manifests itself more in your like 50s or 60s.
Yeah. So again, you don't need too much in your 30s. True aging starts around 35 to 38. By the time you're 40, you're very deficient in things. Most people don't really see problems until their mid 40s, but obviously they've already started aging. By the time you hit 50, if you're not on a significant program, you're behind the 8 ball. Most people, by the time they're 60, oh my God, we really need to go full court press. And then we do, exosome infusions and like a whole lot of things. But I know young people want to start early, but they need to just like not go overboard on things they don't need yet.
Yeah. Don't start taking, like a bunch of pharmaceuticals when you're 20.
Yes. Unless a doctor gives them to you. I don't want to.
Yeah. But yeah, when is your, I guess, updates to the books coming out on the list?
So I'm working on it right now. I have rewritten Every Reason That You Age. So that part is done. I am revamping all the agents. It's going to take me a little while. I hate to put a time thing on it because then someone's going to say, oh, I heard you on a podcast. It's coming out next February. Well, it's not. I have a lot of work to do, but it's in progress.
Good. Yeah, I'll looking forward to it. Are you going to add glycine there?
I am. It is absolutely on there's lots of things that are on the list. Absolutely. Yes. But see, that's G and that's after the A's. And I just finished astaxanthin and I'm on epigenetic right now.
Nice.
Because I'm just I love the fact it's a CD38 inhibitor, therefore it's NAD sparing and it's anti-inflammatory, which I didn't know until, I don't think anyone knew until, fairly recently. So anyway, but these are the things. I'm trying to find the nuggets that people really need to know in not only new agents, but agents we've talked about before. So I'm going back and just redoing from the scratch.
Yeah. Where can people like stay up to date with that? Where can they learn more about you and your books?
Great. So my website is kaufmannprotocol.com. My Instagram is Kaufmann Anti-Aging. I try to put updates on there. I'm really terrible at it. I answer all emails myself. So if anyone wants to go on there and send me a note or ask a question, I promise I will get to it. It just takes me a bit of time because it is me and only me, unless my 18-year-old comes from college and then she helps me out sometimes.
All right. We'll put the links in the show notes. And thanks for coming to the show.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for doing this.
All right, that's it for this episode. Make sure you check out my new book, The Longevity Leap, on Amazon. I'd also appreciate if you share this episode with a friend or family member. Other than that, my name is Siim. Stay tuned for the next episode. Stay empowered.